Hello everybody and welcome back to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot, where we're going to have a go at testing out the Airbus in flight. So we'll see how it handles doing some maneuvers in this sort of mid-level airspace and comparing it to what we'd expect from the real aircraft. I am a real Airbus pilot. I fly it in the real world and I have done for a fair few years now. So it'd be interesting to see how this compares in some of the things I'd expect it to do, especially the more Airbus related things like some of the flight protections that they use. As always, this is not for any real world use, it's just for our enjoyment in Flight Simulator, just for our fun on here. So of course, if you do fly the Airbus, you're obviously going to go and use your aircraft manuals and your airline's procedures. But today we're going to have a bit of fun and see how this compares to what we would expect. As ever, the graphics are absolutely stunning on the outside, and the weather in the new Flight Simulator is just amazing. I mean, the way the lighting works and the clouds get lit up and cast shadows is fantastic, really spot on. So let's go and see how the aeroplane behaves. So we're inside the flight deck now of the Airbus, and I would expect to be able to take out the automatics in a certain way. So let's have a go at that. So we're going to, first of all, to turn off the auto thrust, I'm going to put the thrust levers where I want them. So they currently should be in the climb gate. So to do that, you put this little dot here next to where you want it. So that's where the current thrust is, the current N1. And now I'll press that. In the real aircraft, you can press these. Oh, that also works as well. So that's great. So they've got that modeled. And now I have control of the auto thrust, and we don't have it shown here. Next, I'm going to take out the autopilot. So autopilot 1. In the real aircraft, you'd press this red button. So we go with that, and there it goes. So that works as well, which is great. That triple click is another sort of Airbus feature where it's reverting something. It stays in heading, which is a bit strange. So let's turn off the flight directors. So that's one flight director off, both off. And now I would expect to have nothing up here, but it does show these things. So now let's look at the PFD, primary flight display, here in front of us. And what I would expect in the normal law, which is referring to the standard Airbus in a happy place where all the systems are working, and what it has is some protections, so it won't let you roll the airplane too far, and by roll I mean put the wings too far at an angle, or over pitch, so pitch up the nose too high so your nose is up too high or down too low. It should be shown on here with some green equals signs, but they aren't modelled in the Airbus in Flight Simulator, so let's go and see if they actually work. So the first thing I'm going to do is see if I bank, it should stop me from banking past 66 degrees, or just over 66 degrees angle of a bank. So first of all, I'm going to bring the speed back. So I'm going to set the speed on here to something sensible. So let's do 240 knots. And now I'm going to do this using manual thrust. As we slow down, I'm going to start the turn, and that little arrow at the top of the blue shows me the bank angle. So that's 10 degrees, 15 degrees, there's 20. There's 30 degrees, and now if I go all the way left, it should eventually stop and not let me go any further, which it does. There we go. It's not letting me pass there. So that's great. So they have put that feature in. Now if I let go, it should return to about 33 degrees, which would be here. But it doesn't. It actually goes to 25. Okay, so it does do something, but not quite perfect, but not bad at all. The thing about the Airbus is, unlike other aircraft, you don't have to trim when it's flying around in this mode. What it does is it automatically trims, which we can actually see down here. This is the trim wheel, and you can see the computer doing it for us. So if I put on loads of thrust and the airplane accelerates, it should trim forward to keep the nose down. And there you go. You see that the airplane actually stays pitching at 0. So that is great. That is a proper Airbus feature. And likewise, I'll just bring the thrust to idle. And now we'll see it trimming the other way. So the trim wheel will now run backwards. And there it goes. So that's the computer. Even though we have no autopilot engaged, which I can prove up here. Let's turn off the auto thrust again. We can see that it is keeping the trim going. And that way, the pitch stays at 0. So that's great. If I want to bank to 20 degrees, the airplane should account for that and actually hold the nose where it is and make us fly level. So I'm going to bank to 20 degrees. And there we go. And now if I let go of the controls, it should stay there. And it does. And it also holds us at level flight using its trim and a bit of elevator up. So that's really good. It does have some of these basic normal law things featured. Something it shouldn't let me do is I shouldn't be able to pitch down too far. So let's see what happens if I go idle and put the nose all the way down. Should eventually stop at 15 degrees, which it does. There it goes, ever so slightly more. Why it doesn't show, it would be really great if it showed it like the real aircraft does, because it's very important. In the real aircraft, these protections aren't always there. So we have little ways of being able to tell on that flight display. And they're very simple. They're just little green markers, so I'm surprised they're not there. Likewise, if I pitch up, I'm going to have to add some thrust to make sure we don't get too slow. We should find it won't go through 30 degrees of pitch, nose up. And there it is. It does slightly, but then it stops, and I'm now full back on the side stick, and it won't let me. So they have modelled some of these protections in normal law, which is really good, as well as the trimming. So these are some nice features. Something I don't like, and I keep seeing, is that the PFD, for some reason, these lines don't line up as you'd expect. That should be 2.5 degrees, 5 degrees, 7.5, and 10 degrees. You can see the 10 marker. But as you see, if I push the nose down, the center line moves, which it shouldn't do. So I don't know why that happens. That is very strange. But there we go. So we have some protections in the aircraft enabled for us. So let's go and have a look at flying around a bit lower down. So now what I'd like to do is see if it's possible to stall the Airbus by getting it very slow, and in normal law it should have protections that stop this being possible. So let's see what happens. So by stalling, I mean the aircraft runs out of lift over the wings. There's not enough air going over the wings, so it can no longer keep the aircraft flying. It's not producing lift because you're just going too slowly. You can tell this because we've got this really high angle of attack. I'm descending slightly, but my pitch is really high. And there we go, alpha floor shows that the thrust will come on, and if I keep pulling back, it should not be possible to get slow enough to stall. The other modes, open climb, I'm not really sure should be there. But here we go, as slow as I can. It just stops at 30 degrees. And now, if it gets too slow, it should put the nose down. So let's check that that does happen. So there's alpha prot, which is those yellow and black squares, and now the nose should lower to make sure we don't actually stall. As soon as we hit there, alpha is max, it should lower down, and here it goes. So it's not letting me stall, and this is a key part of the Airbus flight control, flight law protections, where it doesn't allow you to do that. And now it will carry on like this. If I let go of the side stick, it should carry on flying at that angle of attack. It doesn't quite, but that's quite a detailed part of it. But there we go. So it does have the low speed protection. Likewise, if we overspeed, which I will do now by taking out the auto thrust, and it's in toga lock, it's very interesting. So if I adjust the thrust, it should be able to clear that out. So there we go, and get rid of the auto thrust. Not sure why it's going into toga lock, it shouldn't really do that. But there we go, if I go to climb like it's asking, now it's clear, there we go, man toga, and we'll leave it there. So it should, eventually, it will overspeed slightly, but then before it goes too fast, it will increase the angle of attack. It will raise the nose, and that will help us from overspeeding too far. So let's see if that happens as we go through the red bar. So I'm not doing anything to the side stick now. It says overspeed, but that is the wrong warning, and I would expect it now to pitch up, but it's not doing it. So that's interesting. It doesn't have the overspeed protection, which I would expect it to have. So now I've brought the thrust to idle. So now what we'll have a look at is whether the Airbus will keep itself trimmed out and level as we put the flaps out. So another feature of the A320 fly-by-wire system in normal law is that it should keep the pitch attitude the same, or keep the flight path the same as you put out the flaps, and it will sort out the trimming and so on for you. So I'm going to put a little bit of thrust on, and we'll have a look at PFD to see what happens. So we're in just about level flight. Put out flaps 1. I'm doing nothing to the side stick now, so just going up a little bit. If we slow down, so the thrust is now idle. get below those orange markers, so that's good. Those are the overspeed limits for the flaps, so it does have those, which is great. Put out flaps 2, and it should lower the nose for us slightly. Yeah, it's not doing a bad job. Without that, you'd expect it, because the flaps travel out, to actually climb a bit more than that. So it is doing some sort of work there. But here's this PFD problem you see, where now it's very hard to judge what your actual pitch attitude is because the ground level keeps changing. So there you go, some more features that are modelled in this this version of the Airbus, as well as a few things missing. So that's all for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. There'll be more to come on the channel where we look at the Airbus and some of its other features, and we'll go through some tutorials and things like that where we look at how we can get it set up and compare it to what we do with the real aircraft. There will also be some streams coming. We'll try flying to some of the more exciting airports that Flight Simulator now has available to us, as well as exploring what the weather means to us as pilots. That's it for today. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully see you again in another video soon.